Welcome, everyone. I'm here today with Lama Tantrapa, and he's the creator of Dream Yoga and Qigong coaching, as well as the lineage holder of Qi He has over 40 years of experience in practicing and teaching Tantra, Qigong, Tai Chi, Aikido, and other healing and martial arts. Lama received religious asylum in the U.S. in 1997, and since then, he has empowered thousands of people from all over the world to experience self-realization and spiritual awakening through his art of being in the flow. In 2000, Lama Tantrapa founded Academy of Qi and it became the first and only school offering professional certification training in Qi Dream Yoga, Qigong coaching, and the profession he pioneered by integrating the ancient arts of Qigong and Dream Yoga with modern coaching mythology. Lama Tantrama is known for producing the award-winning podcast, The Secrets of Qigong Masters, and organizing multiple online summits. We're very happy to have you here with us today.
It's a
But
pleasure to be here with you.
thank you. I'd like to begin by exploring that you've been teaching Qi for over 3 decades. And I know that Qi blends the ancient wisdom of Tibetan shamanism with modern sciences. Tell us how this unique system helps your students cultivate resilience in the face of uncertainty and overwhelm.
Well, it's a great question. Each of us living a modern lifestyle probably experience a fair amount of stress. And most of this stress isn't even something that has been done to us. It's how we react to the demands the modern way of life imposes on us, the expectations of people around us, and whatever we are dealing with in our daily lives, business, relationships, and any other aspect of life. So, most of our stress is self-inflicted. I teach my students and coaching clients how to stop adding insult to injury, to develop a more intelligent way to recognize that the stressors in many cases are not really to cause us harm as much as it is an invitation to learn something. That's a fascinating thing that most people have heard once or twice in their lives. It's often referred to as reframing challenges into learning opportunities. And what happens as a result? As a result of that, we learn how to become responsive instead of reactive to whatever life throws our way. When we respond to the challenges that life presents us with, we no longer fight against them. We actually learn how to adapt, how to flow with them, how to learn as much as humanly possible. Imagine what it would be like to transform all problems into learning opportunities. That would literally mean that you no longer have problems in your life. You're experiencing a lot of lessons for which you may become grateful once you learn whatever lessons contained and you start applying those learnings into your daily life and applying them to your business, relationships, finances, health, and other areas of life. In other words, instead of feeling dreadful feelings, you start feeling grateful feelings. And I probably don't need to emphasize how important the state of gratitude is, do I?
You also developed a profession called Qigong coaching 20 years ago. And I'd love to know what makes it different from all the other types of coaching, as well as the energy healing that it brings, and how does it help navigate stress, burnout, and major life transitions?
You know how most coaching focuses on mindset. It's a mental game. And most energy healing feels like a mystical spa day. Qigong coaching says we're not going for one or the other. We integrate them so that we're not just experiencing energy healing as passive recipients of somebody tweaking our energy or doing any kind of manipulation of our channels and meridians. We also learn how to develop a different approach to mindset instead of looking at it as just mental tricks or a certain shift in the paradigms. We learn how to develop energetic awareness of our thoughts. That's right. What else can all our thoughts be made of other than the energy of consciousness? We learn how to relate to thoughts as energy events, as certain mental energy projections, and all the dream characters we may dream up in our minds, our energy beings, and we learn how to relate to them as such. Of course, we want to start with ourselves, recognizing our own energetic nature, and learn how to function in our daily lives as energy beings. Every step you take on earth, every move you make, every word you speak, or even every thought you have are energy events. And we learn how to relate to them in the same way, whether these are physical expressions like the steps I mentioned, or the mental projections. We learn how to recognize energetic qualities associated with those energy expressions. And we learn how to recognize different degrees of energy resonance. What's energy resonance? You probably experienced meeting some people who you really resonated with. And it felt like you spend an hour or two in the company of such person, and time just flies by. Time flies when you're having fun or when you are doing something that you resonate with. You may listen to music that you really love listening to, and you never get tired of listening to it because you resonate with that music. It actually makes you feel great, and it gives you a certain sense of vibrant wellness or well-being. Well, what's the alternative? If you focus on things that you don't resonate with, for example, instead of listening to a piece of music that you love listening to, you change the tune. Maybe you tune into a different frequency. Listen to something that you can't stand. Or meet a person and spend time with someone who makes you cringe. That's going to feel very different. The time would not move at the same pace. You would actually feel like I can't wait to stop listening to this crap, or I can't wait to get away from this person. In other words, your body will feel something, and different degrees of resonance affect body in different ways. We learn how to pay attention to our body, and especially to the perfect gauge that we all have. As long as we are alive, we have this gauge running. The name of the gauge is breathing. Unlike most Qigong teachers, I don't teach people how to breathe right according to some protocol or some idea how you should be breathing. Instead, Qigong coaching invites you to pay attention to breathing because it reveals how much you resonate with something or someone. It may be a person, it may be a music piece of music, it may be a thought form or course of action that you may be thinking of. If you follow a course of action that makes you cringe, how well will you proceed down this path? How much will you enjoy traveling down this road? It's kind of like spending some extra time with a person who makes you cringe. It's not going to be a fun experience in the process and probably will not lead you to the most harmonious results. Only harmonious steps lead to harmonious goals. So we learn how to actually transform our idea of pursuit of goals and stop pursuing goals. Unlike pretty much every coaching methodology that tells you that you need to have goals, you need to pursue the goals, you need to steadfastly follow a certain course of action. And instead of goals, which are always extrinsically motivated, I encourage my students and coaching clients to focus on their inner dreams, which are authentic. You see the difference between extrinsically motivated goals, which are informed by and large by people's opinions, media influencers, the influence from organized religions or other institutions, maybe even pictures in magazines or internet. But instead of those, we learn to recognize that we all have dreams. We already authentically resonate with our dreams because we created them in our minds. And we learn how to pursue those and develop clarity as to how each step we take can be done in harmony with our dreams so that we achieve that objective and enjoy the ride in the process. Does it make sense?
That's wonderful. Well, I'm really fascinated by dream yoga, and in
Yeah.
particular, your method of lucid daydreaming and connecting with your authentic dreams, especially when things get tough in business or in our personal lives. Can you tell us more about dream yoga and particularly the lucid daydreaming?
Well, lucid daydreaming is actually the term that I coined many years ago, a couple of decades ago, actually, when I was working on my first meditation CD called Qigao Initiation. I had to translate all my knowledge into English because English is my third language. So I had to figure out how to teach everything that I knew in English. Lucid daydreaming suddenly clicked, made perfect sense to me because essentially every thought that you have is a daydream. Most of our thoughts are about what? Well, either about the past, we are recalling certain events of either distant past or recent past, which often triggers reactions. It may cause us anger, remorse, wishful thinking, or feeling guilty. In other words, there is always some kind of emotion attached to recalling experiences of the past. Well, by definition, the past is the past. Whatever recollections you have in your mind is a form of daydreaming. And clearly, thinking about the future even more obviously is a form of daydreaming because the future hasn't happened yet. So any thought about future is a daydream by definition. Well, does thinking of future in any way causes people any degree of anxiety or fears or worries? You bet. That's the definition of worries, right? Thinking of the future in the way that you wish it would not happen. Anxiety, basically, it's like worry on steroids. You essentially become anxious or fearful of something bad happening, even though it hasn't happened. And it may or may not even happen this way. But we project onto the future certain ideas. That's a form of daydream, a nightmare of a daydream, if you will. How often do people suffer from nightmares that they daydream about? Pretty much any time you focus on that which you do not resonate with, you experience some degree of dissonance instead of resonance. And if you are stuck in a particular pattern of daydreaming about the future that is bleak, scary, or outright dangerous, you essentially are creating a nightmare out of that daydream. Nobody's doing this kind of things to us. We do it to ourselves unwittingly. Why? Because we're not awake to the dreamlike nature of daydreaming. If you realize I'm creating a nightmare in my mind, thinking about the future or thinking about the past, or even thinking about now, you may be thinking what is going on there in Palestine or in Ukraine. There's going to be some degree of dissonance. And the more we do this to ourselves unwittingly, the more we suffer. If we recognize a true nature of our experiences, that these are daydreams, then suffering would become optional. Now, suffering being optional is a popular phrase among many modern thought leaders, but very few provide a clear and doable course of action that would make suffering optional. Well, that's exactly what I do in the context of teaching and coaching people in regard to learning how to recognize that you are dreaming in your dreams. A simple step removed is recognizing that you are dreaming in your daydreams. And it's easier to learn how to be lucid in your daydreams than in your dreams at night, simply because you're not asleep. And that's why I use lucid daydreaming as the preliminary practice leading up to learning how to be lucid in your night dreams and eventually awakening in those dreams. And even awakening to the dreamlike nature of this experience, this dream that we call daily life.
Great explanation. So I understand that 1 year ago you launched Resilience Center in Denmark. What inspired this creation and how does it support conscious leaders in both that country and globally?
To tell you the truth, it started with a crisis. I came to Denmark when I brought my elderly parents who escaped the war in Ukraine to this country. More than 3 years ago, when the war in Ukraine broke out, I helped my parents make their way to Denmark. And Denmark at that time offered the Ukrainian refugees status with very little red tape, which was incredible. And my parents were extremely grateful for that. However, they had really hard time adjusting to living in a foreign country. They had never lived abroad before. And so I had to travel from the United States, where I was living, to Denmark several times a year. Well, after having done that for a couple of years, I finally realized this is too much travel, too much going back and forth, and I decided to move. So I moved to Denmark, and Denmark is a lovely little country populated by bicycles. One of the things that I observed here is that there is something rotten in Denmark, to paraphrase Prince Hamlet. What is rotten in Denmark is the lack of resilience. People constantly complain to me about stress, anxiety, being burnout at work. They were just falling apart. And I didn't understand. On paper, this is one of the happiest countries in the world. What is wrong with this picture? Why is everyone is complaining to me about burned out, going on sabbaticals, dropping out of schools, or just quitting their jobs? Well, I found out that they got it good. The economy is extremely solid. The social safety net is so substantial in Denmark. It's one of the original welfare states, right? And there are no natural disasters. I asked folks who live here, so how often do you get some tornadoes? They're like, no, there is no tornadoes in Denmark. How about some storms, ice storms or otherwise? No, we don't get any storms. Hail? No, no hail. How about some hurricanes? No, there are no hurricanes. Well, how about some flash flooding or wildfires? No, there's none of that. Obviously, there is no tsunamis. There are no earthquakes in Denmark. It's flat as a pancake, so no volcanoes either. So I finally found out that people in this country were having such an easy time living in peaceful and relatively crime-free society that they didn't experience enough challenges. Their comfort zone was literally shrinking. 1,000 years ago, they were Vikings. They raped and pillaged most of Europe. Over the subsequent 1,000 years, they didn't have much in the way of war. They had very solid economy, prosperous democracy, and what could possibly go wrong with it? Well, they actually lost a great deal of resilience. And I realized that my best contribution to this culture, to this country, would be to help them regain some degree of resilience. Hence, the creation of Resilience Center. In the context of Resilience Center, a startup that I founded, I also started organizing a World Resilience Summit, which is a great way to position yourself as a thought leader of other thought leaders in this industry. And obviously gave me access to a lot of industry thought leaders who were presenters at our summit, whom I started inviting to join my mastermind group, collaborating, doing joint ventures, and things like that. Basically, that's my way of both contributing to this country and also elevating the entire industry of resilience, both organizational resilience, personal resilience, and even national resilience. We are collaborating with some folks who are experts in national resilience, and a few are even global resilience experts. This is definitely a bigger game than what I expected to play when I was just moving to Denmark to help my parents.
So you're also organizing a resilience summit, and this is going to be online. How do we
Yes.
participate? How do we get involved as participants?
Well, it's going to be held online on our website, resiliencesummit.org. We will invite experts in resilience to do something different from our previous summit. There is going to be panel discussions where several thought leaders in particular area of resilience will be invited to come together and exchange some ideas and share thoughts, answer some questions from the audience. There's also going to be some challenges. Challenges obviously is the thing not to avoid, but to embrace if you want to become more resilient. So I am not against challenges. I am not saying let's just go with the flow all the time. We need to build up resilience. It's okay to explore the edges of our comfort zone. By doing that, we gradually and organically expand our comfort zone so it becomes greater instead of shrinking if we don't use it. If you don't use resilience, you basically become less and less resilient and more frail. I don't feel more frail. At 55 years of age, I feel very much like I was feeling 25 years ago. How is that possible? Did it tap into the fountain of youth? Well, yes,
Mhm.
that's my methodology of working with energy, with consciousness, and developing resilience. Not running away from challenges, but not getting overwhelmed by them either. Building up the energy reserves to such level that you don't feel like a ping pong ball on the pool table.
Yes.
Instead, you feel energetically sound and strong to deal with the other pool table balls on the pool table. Maybe even build up your energy to greater capacity, perhaps eventually become like a bowling ball on the pool table. You know what I mean?
Yes, very much so.
Now, that's something that we'll be exploring in the context of our Resilience Summit, and we will have world-class thought leaders and experts in both Qigong and resilience featured in.
Well, it certainly sounds exciting, and I can't wait for you to publish it so we can all join in and have some fun.
Well, the website for it is resiliencesummit.org.
Very
Okay.
exciting. So, Lama, you're also working on building the online community called Mastery Dojo. What's the vision behind it, and uh, how will it support people on their path to inner mastery and personal transformation?
That's exactly what Mastery Dojo is dedicated to, supporting people on their path of mastery and personal transformation. Imagine if a Netflix and a Zen monastery hooked up and had a baby that inherited the best of both parents. It would be raised on ancient wisdom, movement mastery, and community support on one hand, but also would have presence online and offer other people the opportunity to tap into tremendous resources of wisdom, knowledge, and expertise. Where does this knowledge and wisdom come from? I've interviewed hundreds of experts in personal development, meditation, spirituality, enlightenment, energy arts, and related disciplines. I started my podcast called The Secrets of Qigong Masters in 2009, the same year as Joe Rogan started his. We have millions of downloads of our podcast and also recorded all the interviews that I had on my podcast and packaged them into seasons. The seasons are not like the spring of 2009 or summer of 2010. No, these are the seasons dedicated to particular topics. And these topics range from personal development to enlightenment to meditation to energy healing to sexual energetics and anything in between. What we do now is we are building this Netflix for personal development. It's essentially an online community of people who are interested in personal development and empowerment and enlightenment. And that's what we will be offering exactly as promised. This is the largest library of interviews with Qigong masters in the world, in addition to 15 or 16 years of podcast recordings. I also organized a half a dozen or more online summits with many world-class leaders presenting. So those presentations, plus the interviews, plus my own master classes and coaching clinics that I have been offering to my community for many years, combined together create an amazing array of information and wisdom that people will be able to tap into. It also will have a concierge created in my image. The avatar created by AI in my image will serve as your concierge. Eventually, we will train this avatar to even provide some basic coaching. Essentially, it's going to be not just a gatekeeper, but a character who will be providing some onboarding advice of where to find the most interesting or most beneficial for each member pieces of wisdom. There's also going to be a tremendous number of online courses that I produced and some of our masters contributed that also will be available. And last but not the least, the community component itself, having the opportunity to connect with 11,000 like-minded people from all over the world would be invaluable to anyone who's on the path of personal development and spiritual growth. That's exactly what we have at this moment. So by the end of this year, we will have probably more, and next year we'll have more members. The growth of our community will lead to attracting even highest caliber world-class thought leaders who will be offering master classes or presentations, serve as our masters of the month. We will have this program called Master of the Month. A particular master will be designated as the Master of the Month, providing some masterclass, Q&A, and a challenge on that particular month. That's something that I really look forward to.
That sounds fascinating. And I know the whole world is being enchanted by AI. So we'll all have to see where that whole universe takes us. Lama Tantrapa, I've really enjoyed having you here today. And thank you so much for sharing everything that you've talked about. It's been fascinating. I look forward to your Resilience Summit, and I'm sure our viewers do too. Thank you so much, Lama, and have a wonderful day.
Blessings to you and to all our viewers.